Professor Sports Cards was doing a live. He did that for 2 hours. Then all that crowd jumped over and listened to SCR, jump into their live, and they were talking about this. And so I jumped in the chat and just said, like, look, there's no truth to this. It took me a few messages before people realized, like, wait a minute, Tpott's in the chat. I don't think I said anything too crazy, except to categorically denounce shill bidding in general and say it's not right. And then all of a sudden on Sunday night, I'm like sitting down to watch a movie with my wife, and my friends are texting me going like, PRyan's posting about you shill bidding Pistons cards. And I'm like, what? I've never shill bid anything, and I don't have any motivation to do it. And even within, it's not to like make an excuse, because I understand people who believe different things do terrible things all the time. But like, I go to church every Sunday. I go to confession regularly. I'm Catholic. I don't lie, cheat, steal. I just don't do that. I believe there are consequences for that.
This is an exclusive. So, and this hopefully will get out there. Hey everyone, this is Doc from EDI Sports Show. So I've been doing a whole bunch of videos and on this whole controversy with shill bidding. And so in this video, we're actually going to do an interview with Tpott, Tyler from Sports Card Investor Channel. We're going to go through the allegations. We're going to go through kind of what's happening. I'm going to give you some evidence so that you can actually see like kind of what goes on behind the scenes. And then we're also going to talk about sort of like the knee-jerk reaction of jumping to conclusions without evidence. And in this particular story, that actually is a real problem, because what you're going to see is that Tyler did not do anything wrong. But I want to bring him up, and I want to bring him onto the stage with me. So thanks for joining me, Tyler.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here, Doc.
For people that don't know who you are, I'm going to put it up. So this is what I know. And so you can correct it. You can add to it. So you work for Jeff Wilson, who's the sports card investor. You're a huge Detroit Pistons card collector. You're the Andre Drummond super collector. You're a father of 5 kids, host of the Market Movers podcast on YouTube, also co-host of Cards on the Table, and also co-host of Spitballing Cards, which is new. How long has that been going on?
We've been doing that for almost 2 years now, actually, I think.
Oh, really? Okay. I didn't realize that. So, yeah. I mean, you're a very, very busy man. And so do you want to add anything to like who you are in this hobby and kind of like how long you've been in it? I know you're attached to Jeff Wilson and the Sports Card Investor brand, but you're a collector and been a collector for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let me give you a little rundown. I'll try to kind of give you the short version. So I grew up collecting in the 90s and mostly collected basketball when I was a kid, but Barry Sanders is my favorite athlete. I grew up in Southwest Michigan, Grand Rapids area, and big Detroit sports fan. I've also been a Chiefs fan since I was in high school, and since about 2001. When Barry retired in 99, and then I got kind of mad at the Lions, and my high school was the Red Arrows. And so I thought the Chiefs were a logical AFC team to root for. I also started playing fantasy football back then and had Priest Holmes on my team, which like won me a championship. So I was just kind of hooked with the Chiefs. Played running back in football for a few years. So I've always liked top tier running backs. And I grew up in Michigan, kind of fell off of collecting like a lot of people when I got into high school. So like, I think the last year I probably collected was 99. And then I got back into it for like a few months in 2008 when I didn't have money to be spending on cards, even at the prices back then, and was enamored with some of the new stuff, like a lot of the patch autos and things that I hadn't seen when I was, a kid. And then was quickly like, what am I doing? I don't have money for this. And I stopped buying, but I kind of stuck all those cards in a bin. And, I got back into it in 2019 when my wife and I were getting ready to move, and I found all my binders from my childhood and my penny box of like Penny Hardaways and other things. And I was just like poring over it. My wife's like, "What are you doing? We got to pack these boxes." And I was just like, "Shh, like I'm in the zone here, enjoying my childhood." I started talking to a friend about it at work, just like, "Oh, I found my cards. It's so cool. I wonder if they're worth anything." And he had actually been like kind of flipping some stuff on eBay, like just casually, not anything very serious. But he was like, "Yeah, I've been kind of like having fun experimenting, like picking up things at card shows and see if I can make a few bucks on eBay, that type of thing. And so he explained it to me, told me after I had bought like an online Beckett price guide membership that not a lot of people really use that anymore. And so I started comping a lot of my cards on eBay and tracking it in a spreadsheet. And that's when I found Jeff Wilson's podcast, Sports Card Investor, right when he started it. I think I was within first 50 subscribers to his YouTube channel. And if you go back, if your audience hasn't seen his videos back then, just go to Sports Card Investor and go to videos and click oldest, and you will see a much different, more subdued version of Jeff, whose intro is more like, "Hello, my name is Jeff Wilson. Today I want to show you some charts and graphs."
Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Sports Card Investor. This is going to be a fun journey, and I am happy to have you along for the ride. My name is Jeff Wilson, and I am an avid sports collector and an investor who is taking a data-driven look at how to invest successfully in sports cards.
And it was maybe much more similar to my early videos than it was to what you see of Jeff now, who's far more of an on-camera personality and showman, at least in that capacity. So Jeff and I got connected because I joined his Discord server right when it opened. I would comment on his videos all the time. And then I became a moderator in his Discord. In about December of 2019, I messaged Jeff and said, "Hey, why don't, if you have like a software agency, why don't you build an app that can generate these charts and graphs instead of just like putting them into Excel like you have been?" And he responded and said, "Actually, that's what I've been working on. It's going to be in beta available like in a few weeks. I think in early January of that year, late December." He gave me early access to help him test and debug. And that was actually part of my background, professional background, was working in systems integration, data management, ETL, just master data management. And so I got into it. He didn't know that. He didn't know I actually had experience. So once he started seeing my like very detailed and video recorded bug reports and things, he was like, "Hey, do you want to like work for me?" And I started doing some part-time work at night. I had actually a really demanding job during the day. COVID hit, as everybody knows. And then like I was sent to work from home. So I'd work my day job all day, many times into the night, spend time with my kids, put them to bed. And then I'd work 2 or 3 hours for Jeff and get up and kind of do it all over again. And so it kind of just went from there. He offered me a full-time job a few times. I said no. And then unfortunately, I, along with like 600 other people, all got laid off in one day because of the COVID impact to the company I worked at. I went back, took him up on the job offer. He was very fair to me, worked in Michigan for about a year remotely, and then eventually moved my family down to Atlanta, and we've just kept growing since then. So I oversee our entire software development team, our whole product team at Sports Card Investor. So I'm on that half, and then my counterpart on the other half, her name's Kelly, oversees all of our like cards creative content, graphics, everything like that side of the company. And of course, we started Cards HQ in the last year. Almost 2 years ago now, 2 years in February, it'll be in Atlanta. It's, one of the biggest card shops in the world.
Terrific. Yeah. So, and we'll get to more later on in the interview. I want to get to the serious stuff here. So, what happened on Instagram is PRyan, Patrick Ryan, who you are familiar with, decided to go scorched earth and make allegations against you, make allegations against Jeff Wilson. This is the Instagram that he posted. You responded to it. I actually have a video coming out. So this will go out tomorrow. So I have a video coming out yesterday that actually gives part of your audio response. And I go through kind of a big, like the full story, like how did we get here? So when people are watching this, they're going to see like, okay, so that's the story. Here's the allegations. Jeff's going to do this. And then I'm going to give you an opportunity to just like address them. And then I have something hopefully that you're going to appreciate. But this is the mainline stuff. He basically was saying, so PRyan was saying that you were shill bidding on Detroit Piston cards, which you came on Sports Card Radio and were like, I have no idea what he's talking about. He's saying you were working in cahoots with Jeff Wilson to prop up card values. Again, unsubstantiated allegation. He then said, you're obviously someone you can't trust. And then you're part of, again, he has this pejorative, unethical people in the hobby. I don't know what he's talking about. And I have been speaking with him and I have been asking him, what does that mean? And he still doesn't have an answer. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Just initially, how do you want to respond to these allegations and just kind of go forward from there?
Yeah, I mean, well, I put that message out for a reason. I thought about it. So kind of how things played out. Neo, Northeast Ohio Cards and Comics, who obviously does a lot of breaking news content on YouTube, and I've been friends with for many years now in the hobby. He features market mover stuff on his charts, on his videos, market movers charts on his videos. He put out a video, I believe it was on a Wednesday, and had a soundbite in that video of the interview that Patrick did with Dr. James Beckett. And in that interview, there was a soundbite that, from what I now understand, at least the way Patrick has explained it, was unintentionally understood outside of context, because there was a jumbled section of it at the beginning in which all you really heard was him say, "Me and my friends, we bid up each other's items so that some other idiot doesn't get a good deal." But apparently what he said, and the part that got cut out, was, "I have people DM me and say," and then he was quoting them, like what they say to him. So that was the part that Neo was like, what are we doing here? What are we talking about? And there was then obviously the conversation from the part of Dr. Beckett about the difference between offensive and defensive shill bidding. And so this was quite the shock and awe for all of us. Yeah. So I heard it and I was just like, what? Like, what's going on? And I was more shocked by what Dr. Beckett was saying, like more surprised, because all of us pulled him up.
And just so, and because you're obviously not going to see that video until after this. So I put on the video for today that I have Jeff Wilson on your Cards on the Table, podcast, literally saying, I thought this was a black and white issue. I didn't realize that there was any gray. And I even I even repeat it, a close up of your face going, correct. This is pretty black and white. So I make it very clear that both of you are not confused about this issue. But here's the problem. And I think this is a big issue, because Dr. Beckett is he's the GOAT. He's one of the GOATs of the hobby. And because people respect him so much, the fact that he doesn't seem to think that there is a black and white issue here makes people like Jeff, who just wants to do what's right, get confused. And if Jeff can get confused, what do you think that regular people can get confused? So I think that's a big issue. You're correct. This is black and white. Shill bidding is bad. It is illegal. Jeff was correct in the Cards on the Table podcast. This is wrong. And I was glad that both of you, so I put that clip in the video because I wanted to make sure that people knew what people were actually saying, not third hand. And I think that we're going to get to that, the mob problem online and on social media, where people say you say things when that's not true. What you actually said was, no, shill bidding is not okay. There is no nuance to it. It's just not okay. And I also put in the legal definition into my video so people actually knew what the law actually is. And there's two conditions. So I go through it. What Patrick did is not illegal, but it's wrong. And he didn't understand what his mistake was. And I've talked to him and he gets it now. Again, you will get to this also. You said he must be going through a lot. So I didn't want to poke the bear. He is going through a lot. We're going to get to what's going on. He's allowed me to release certain information. So we're going to get to that. But do you want to address these allegations and kind of just like, what do you think? First of all, what do you think about unsubstantiated allegations?
Yeah. Well, let me kind of continue that train of thought from how we got to that point to where we are today, because I think that path matters a lot. So once all that information came out, I went to Jeff, and it was Thursday morning. Okay. So every week, for those who don't know, on Sports Card Investors YouTube, every Thursday, we release a video that we call Cards on the Table, where we have a main topic and 3 other mailbag topics. And we talk about a lot of breaking news, just what's going on in the hobby each week. It's meant to be like a hobby news, round table. And we obviously, like in advance, go, okay, here's the different things. Here's what we've seen. Some weeks, are heavier than others from what we have to choose from. And I sent this to Jeff and I said, this is a big deal. Like, we really need to talk about this because of who's involved and who's saying this and what's going on. And so after a back and forth, Jeff's main reservation when I brought that to him was, he's like, look, I have a relationship with Patrick. I've become friendly with him. We did a big deal at the National. We featured him in a dedicated video of his collection on the SCI channel. Correct. And Patrick's been very friendly. He started out actually very critical of Jeff, like 4 years ago, like really, really critical of Jeff, as have many others been. And then he got to know Jeff and he apologized and they connected, and he realized he had misunderstood Jeff in a lot of ways. He also realized that Jeff had shifted and evolved a lot of his content and a lot of the way he was doing things.
I agree.
And when you meet Jeff, like, there's different versions of him. I won't go down that path too much, but I've had so many people over the years say, like, I had Jeff all wrong. I just only see him on a video and I assume that I know him and that I know what he stands for and that I know what he's about. And that, I think, will dovetail into our conversation here about mob mentality and what I would call rash judgment. So we do the video, and Jeff basically said, because he was literally flying in, we had to record the video in the morning. There's no time to reach out and get a statement from Patrick or from Dr. Beckett, who Jeff also knows and has been to his house. So he's like, I want to be objective, factual about what's happened with them. And then I just want to talk about shill bidding and why it's wrong. And that's what we did. And so we covered it.
I thought it was great.
Honestly, I tried to just distinguish between, I tried to distinguish between objective reality, objective right and wrong, legal right and wrong, versus subjective intention, and whether or not somebody meant to do something, whether or not somebody thought that what they were doing was wrong or not. There are many instances, many examples of those types of things in the world, where we all disagree about right and wrong and morality and things along those lines. So we talk about, like, subjective culpability and all of that. That's what I talked about in my treatise of the subject. Okay. And then a few days go by and Patrick started feeling the burn, I think, from a collective hobby, treatment of this subject and reaction from a lot of different angles and a lot of different degrees of rage, surprise, indignation, all these things. And maybe unsurprisingly, especially for somebody with his net worth, started to either himself or with his lawyer on behalf of him, basically threaten people with defamation lawsuits, tell them to take it down. Jeff actually reached out to Patrick after we recorded the video, before the video went out, and said, hey, I just want to give you a heads up. We are talking about this subject on tonight's video. And then at some point, I think after the video came out, Patrick responded, and he, was like, wanting Jeff to take the video down. And Jeff said, like, Patrick, I think we were pretty reasonable to you, but this is a big deal in the hobby and we can't not talk about it. It's already up. I'm not going to take it down. And I think at that point, it just got contentious. Like, I think Patrick got pretty upset about that. So if you flash forward to Sunday, it's Sunday night. I'm sitting down to watch a movie with my wife after a long week and a long day, and, got to do it all over again on Monday. And I have friends texting me saying, PRyan is putting you on blast on his Instagram. And I open it and I'm like, I mean, I don't really cuss, but, like, my reaction was pretty significant. Like, what the F, like, what's going on here? And I'm just reading through this. It was so surprising that I was, like, racking my brain going, what is he talking about? Like, what could he be talking about? What could be misconstrued? I've never shill bid anything in my life. I'm not a super wealthy man. I have 5 kids, which is obviously very expensive, but I also am not, like, paycheck to paycheck to where I need to, like, shill bid low dollar cards. And, like, even beyond that, I don't even think this is really a thing. Like, low dollar cards just sell frequently enough. Like that's what the SCR guys were joking about on their stream, is like, is this even a reality? Can somebody do this? What would that look like? And I, in a private conversation with somebody else, said, I don't like, what would that mean, that I'm bidding a copy of a gold Prism Andre Drummond card that I already own from $15 up to 22 to try to like sell mine? Like it doesn't, none of it makes any sense. So I thought about it a lot. And I didn't know whether I wanted to respond to it, ignore it. I obviously screenshotted it. When I woke up in the morning on Monday, it had been replaced by a stream of 20 or 22 different apology stories from Patrick for all the things that he had done. Also with some, I won't call them excuses, but just maybe explanations from his perspective of where he should have disagreed more with Patrick Ryan, with Dr. Beckett on his podcast, where he should have clarified more that he was talking about other people DMing him. And
he also doubled down on that when I talked to him. He also said that he should have pushed back a little bit more on what Dr. Beckett was saying, but he didn't, and he regretted that. So go ahead.
That's right. Yeah. And like, this is where I want to center it back on kind of like who I am, my mindset, my attitude toward these types of things. I've had a number of different content creators blocked for years on Instagram. And the reason I blocked them is because I take a lot of issue with rash judgment. It's a human temptation. It's something that we all do. We all instinctually, even Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, like we make assessments of people. We make assumptions, even sometimes based on the subconscious. And then we kind of go from there. And we do it on steroids on the internet. Like we just see people. The internet is not real. It's not real people. It's not how we are in real life. It's not how we would be if we were sitting and having a beer with each other. It's just not reality. It's a different version, and it fosters some kind of weird dynamic that tends to bring out the worst in people more often than it brings out the best. And you just feel that term keyboard warrior is so accurate. Like you just feel like there's no consequence. There's no immediate impact to you going, no, you suck. And I bet you smell like balls. And just like whatever dumb things that people type and put on the posts, they wouldn't do that in person, or even if you were just talking like we are right now. So that's something that, as I've been on and off of social media over the years, I have really thought about a lot. And I am not the type of person who seeks out the limelight. I don't clout chase. I don't really legacy chase. I don't do those things. I just want to raise good human beings and make sure that the next generation of my bloodline, which is the only thing I can control in the world to an extent, is going to be good people who want to, love and serve their neighbor and just bring about good in the world. So that's kind of my attitude. So when I see people who just see something else and then they start smearing somebody else's good name and reputation without having the facts, with just believing anything and then proliferating that, I take exception to that. It's not what I stand for. It's very frustrating. And so I've had people blocked. When all this stuff happened, I had a couple days to think about it. And then I obviously released that message. So what you showed on that screen, that screenshot, it's actually an almost 15-minute audio message. You can see that, that I recorded explaining the events, explaining that I can't say with certainty what was going through Patrick's head or prompted it that night. The best I can think of is that I'm collateral damage and guilty by association because he was upset with Jeff, and was just kind of pulling us both into the loop and backed into a corner and feeling really frustrated. And he also shared that he's got some really unfortunate, personal stuff going on, which I can majorly sympathize with. Actually, yesterday, my grandma died. And my mom has been really sick for a couple of months. Another good friend of ours has been really sick to where we can't go to their house for Thanksgiving. I'm not saying that to like garner sympathy. I'm just saying Patrick said in one of his slides that you never know what somebody else is going through. And that is 100% accurate. It's 100%. That's real life. People going through tough stuff. That's real life. Having empathy for people is the way that it should be, not just trying to like pile on and beat them up and make them depressed and anxious and like, potentially go want to do something terrible. My friend who I mentioned that got me back into the hobby in 2019, like selling cards on eBay and everything, he took his own life in 2022. And so like, I'm just acutely aware of all of this stuff. All of these things, we're all people. And that's why. So I'm kind of like meandering, but I bring that all back to where I'm like looking at this going, all right, I knew the live stream was going on. Professor Sports Cards was doing a live. He did that for 2 hours. Then all that crowd jumped over and listened to SCR, jump into their live, and they were talking about this. And so I jumped in the chat and just said, like, look, there's no truth to this. It took me a few messages before people realized, like, wait a minute, Tpott's in the chat. They dropped the StreamYard link, and I just got on and said, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I'm pretty much an open book. I'm as transparent as I can be. I'm an honest guy, but I do value my good name, and I don't appreciate it being, slandered and smeared with false allegations and accusations. And so I kind of made an exhortation too during that, as well as in the audio message, asking Patrick to please go back on his Instagram, which I know he said he's off of right now, but at least to clear the air and say, this isn't true. It was bad satire, or whatever the purpose of it was. There's just no truth to it. I've never shillbit anything, and I don't have any motivation to do it. And even within, it's not to like make an excuse, because I understand people who believe different things do terrible things all the time. But like, I go to church every Sunday. I go to confession regularly. I'm Catholic. I don't lie, cheat, steal. I just don't do that. I believe there are consequences for that. So it's not something I do. And this is the last thing I'll say before I'm sure, I can answer more questions or specifics from you. But I read a story once, and I just think it's really fitting. Somebody basically was guilty of gossip, more specifically what we would call calumny, which is lies, not like telling the truth about what somebody did inappropriately, but lying about somebody doing something. And so they went to their priest and they confessed and said, I'm sorry, Father, I lied about this person. And he said, okay, well, I want you to go up to the top of the highest hill in the town and bring your feather pillow, cut it open and shake it out all over the hill, and then just come back to me. They're like, well, that's kind of a weird thing. Okay, whatever you say, Padre. So they go out, they come back to him, and they said, I did it. And he said, okay, now I want you to go pick up all of those feathers, every last one, and make sure you put it back in the pillow. And they said, that's impossible. Like, the wind's been blowing. We had a big storm. I don't even know where those feathers are. And he said, exactly. Once you do that, once you lie about somebody and you put it out there, especially in the internet now, which is an infinite sea of spreading, grapevining stuff, you can't put it back in the pillow. There's no amount of reparation. So even if you do a follow-up video or post and you say, I was wrong about this, I had this guy wrong, some portion of those people who heard the original message won't hear the second one, or just won't believe it. They'll just be like, oh, he just paid you off, or he whatever. So that's my mindset. That's where I'm coming from.
And this is actually, so this is a perfect segue. And again, I want to thank you so much for coming on. And this is where I think my role in the hobby is. And I've been trying to figure out, like, where do I fit into all of this? Jeff has his lane, you have your lane, SCR has their lane. And I was trying to figure out where my lane is. And I think this is where it is. I am like the neutral party. I don't like, we've never met. This is the first time we're talking. Like, yep. I did get your, comment on my video where, I took umbrage with your vintage cards are worthless video, which again, I think you realized that I wasn't really going after you. I was just using the video as, as a thing. Because I have, you're just a collector. And I've always known that different than Jeff. I agree with all the assessment of Jeff. He has pivoted, he has changed, and he has evolved, as well as learned and grown. Yeah. And I have said it multiple times on my channel. I think the Cards HQ thing has been amazing, not just for his own progression, but for the hobby. I think it's a good thing. And I wish there was another shop. So we have, Burbank on the West Coast. We have you guys in Atlanta. I think there needs to be somebody in the Northeast.
We're working on it.
Yeah, but that'd be great. Honestly, that'd be great because there needs to be that kind of, it's sort of like an exchange, and that's what's missing in the hobby. So I think what you guys are doing is good, but let me do this. This is an exclusive. So, and this hopefully will get out there in terms of, what makes sense. So I've been talking to Patrick, and so he actually has an apology for you and
Oh,
for
wow.
Jeff. This is an official statement that he has given me permission to give. So he said, on Sunday night, I posted unsubstantiated claims against Tpott and Jeff Wilson, being individuals who protected the value of cards they owned by having others bid on them. That was wrong, and I apologize to them. As a sign of sincerity and as a sign of appreciation for the great work the Sports Card Investor team has done in the world of nonprofits, I've made a $50,000 donation to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta in their honor. During my hiatus from Sports Card social media, I'd like to remind people to not let moments of vulnerability make them subject to compromising their moral grounds. The good news is that this hobby is full of many great people. I consider Jeff and Tpott squarely in that category. The bad news is that there are some unethical people in the hobby who will try and take advantage of you. I'd like to share, since many texted asking, that my mom is well on her way to a full recovery after being in a life-threatening car accident last weekend. Be there for your family whenever possible. The prayers and well wishes of so many was very powerful. Again, my apologies to Jeff and Tpott. I'm excited to continue to watch the great charity work they do, as it's an example to everyone, myself especially. So there you go, Tpott. I know you had asked on SCR, why can't he just, because he was apologizing for everything else, but he didn't apologize to you and to Jeff specifically. And so when I was talking to him, again, there is a lot that he's going through. He has been in and out of a hospital and he just said, well, what can I do? And I said, honestly, I think if you would just make an apology, like a formal official apology. He's like, well, I'm not on social media anymore. I go, I don't think that's going to work. I go, I'm sort of like, I don't have a dog in this fight. If you do it on my channel, people will be like, well, he's not connected to anybody, therefore it has to be real. Like, I'm not, like, nobody pays me, nobody, like, this is it. So, there you go. I wanted you to know that. And I've been working with him to try to get that for you. So that's his official apology.
Well, I want to say I really appreciate that from Patrick, and it means a lot. And I forgive him. I've had that in my heart all week. Like I said, I recognized something had to be going on. Even I didn't know about his mom at the time, obviously, but it's like, I know the world kind of piles on you. And that's one of the things I brought up when we talked about this originally on Cards on the Table too, was just, I'm not the type of guy who believes in single offense cancel culture. When it is discovered that you do something wrong, I think logically what makes sense is people want to really know, is this an isolated event that was an honest mistake? Or is there a pattern of this historically and, those other things? But one of the things that came out of this from my perspective that I again, in that video, I called for this is I think Dr. Beckett, and maybe he has plans to do this. I don't imagine Patrick wants to do this right now. He probably wants to sit a few plays out and just reflect. But Dr. Beckett did seem to be pretty passionate about this idea of like it being okay at times to bid on your own items or have your friends do it. It seems like a very wrong thing. Like Jeff said, it seems black and white, but maybe he doesn't think so. And maybe other people don't think so either, would be to have an actual, like, hopefully non-contentious, honest debate about the topic, like two sides, somebody who's knowledgeable on one side and him on the other side, and have an open forum to talk about it. For a number of years, I actually talked to Jeff about the idea of like how I thought there actually should be a hobby ethics council. And whether or not at the time, like, should we try to spearhead that? And Jeff said, well, for a myriad of reasons, I don't want to try to lead that myself. One, because I don't think people will respect me leading that. Like, they'll just think it's some weird hypocritical thing. And we had even talked around at the time, like kicked around, like, well, who would be the best person for that? And I thought Dr. Beckett, like, who better than he's just so non-controversial until this moment. But there are topics like this that need to be discussed. There are less serious things, more innocuous things, I'll call them, even just down to like buyer dealer interactions at shows, other topics like a lot of stuff that could use really meaningful conversation with people on both sides, having honest dialogue.
I agree.
And coming with an exhortation to the audience to say, like, try not to be wolves today and just ravenous on one side, like telling people how evil they are for something, but just listen to the points. Now on this topic, I'll be honest, I think most people would pretty concretely cemented into, like, you just shouldn't do it. Just never do it. It's that simple. Never bid on your items, and then go from there. But yeah, there's a lot of points maybe that could be made on both sides. I heard a couple really good, maybe somewhat aggressive treatments of this topic by Because I'm Carlos, who has a YouTube channel, and he
Correct.
and Vintage Dan did a breakdown of this, who's an attorney. Dan is. And then there was another podcast on Sports Card Clubhouse with Mike, who is Junk Wax Hero, and I'm forgetting the other guy's name. But both of them kind of talked about this in great detail as well, and so have others. There are legal implications for different activities that people have literally been sent to federal prison for, and so it's just, you got to be careful.
Well, I put on the video that's coming out today, again yesterday, for everybody watching this. So the two components that you have to have. So the first component is that you're bidding on your own stuff without the intent to actually purchase it. You're just trying to bid up the price. So that's condition number one. Condition number two is that you're deceiving the public as to the demand of the card. So let's say there's 5 people bidding on a card, and you jump in number 6 and you keep bidding.
Yeah.
And I think you even said that, if Patrick had shown, was it just once or was he multiple bidding? Again, what he did was not illegal. Because as far as I know, and I've never been on Fanatics Collect before. I've only used eBay, and on eBay you're not allowed to do it. So if it's your cards, you're not allowed to bid on your own cards. So if you do it, you just get kicked off the platform. It may not be illegal, but it's against the terms of service. Now, I don't know about Fanatics Collect. If there's any way for, again, hobby influencers, and Jeff is a big one, to get Fanatics Collect to make that a terms of service, that would be great. What I didn't understand from Dr. Beckett, and I would love to hear your opinion on this, and then we'll get to the mob mentality piece, is that he was saying that he likes to help friends out. And what I didn't understand from him is, he's a very wealthy guy. Like you and I, we're similar. We're just workers. We work hard. We just go to work. I'm in the same position that you. I'm not living paycheck to paycheck, but I'm not a wealthy guy.
Yeah.
Like I don't have money to just burn. So I have to make very smart financial decisions, but I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. I'm very comfortable. But I've worked my ass off my whole life. Like there are points in my career where I've had 3 or 4 jobs at the same time. And it sounds like you had the same thing. I just don't have 5 kids, so I don't know how you do it. I'll just put it that way.
This was gone before it too. Just for
well, I'll put it this way: your dome looks good, so
it's nice.
You're doing a good job. You're like the white Jordan, so
I'll take it.
Yeah, there you go. But what I didn't understand is that if he makes promises to people, and I put it in the video that the Dr. Beckett promise is a problem, and that maybe he should not help people anymore. Because he's supposed to know what all the cards are worth.
Yeah.
And the problem is that he doesn't. And I did a whole video on how you actually comp out the cards. Like, how do you figure out the value of your cards? And I showed that the Michael Jordan rookie card is not worth $200,000. It's just not. Now, there's a lot of people that, are very upset with that. They're like, no, because this is what the sale is. And it's like, no, reality is reality.
Yeah.
And I go through the history of the card, and I give what I believe the current value is right now. Now, again, this is the other piece, is we don't know what the future is. I can only tell you what the value is right now. Yep. I don't know what it'll be in 3 months from now. But because Dr. Beckett makes promises that, you'll get a certain amount in auction, he now puts himself in a position that if it doesn't go for that, he looks bad. And I think that he was kind of justifying, like, well, no, Dr. Beckett, you should never make a promise. Like, I put stuff up, like there's an auction house here in Arizona called Gray Flannel. And I put 5 items up for auction. And I went to them. And I remember one of them was a Mickey Mantle autograph jersey, a Wayne Gretzky signed jacket with all the 93 Kings, Gordie Howe jersey, and I believe it was a Ken Griffey Jr. Jersey, all autographed.
Yeah.
And they said to me, we think this is what it'll go for, but we cannot guarantee because it's an auction. And I'm like, okay, thank you. Because they're reputable. And I used to go to the Leland's auction in New York all the time with my father. And, when we would sometimes bid on items, but you never know, because that's the purpose of an auction. You're going to see what happens. And Dr. Beckett was upset that the Babe Ruth went for $3 million less than expected. And it's like, I'm a little concerned about his integrity at this point. Maybe he's just too old and he's too out of touch with reality. But like, if a card goes for X, I was very concerned, and I know Jeff did a video. I was very concerned about Mr. Wonderful buying that MJ dual logo man for $12.9 million. It is not worth $12.9 million. There's no world in which it's worth $12.9 million. And he's going to try to manipulate people into thinking that it's worth 12.9. But, and this is sort of the problem, where you have to know what the value of the cards are. So in terms of him buying cards, I just didn't understand. He's got the cash. Why didn't he just give the cash to his friends and just take the cards and then consign them to Probstein and get whatever he gets back?
That was my thought too, is, instead of manipulating the outcomes of an auction, feloniously, I think is a word, if it goes short, like because he mentioned, it was my reputation with my friend on the line, and we don't know who his friend was, and maybe they did need the money, and that type of a thing. If he has it, to your point, he could have just said, I'm going to pay you out the gap. Hey, John, whatever, whoever, I feel really bad. Like, I really thought you would get this for them. You didn't. Because you're such an important friend to me, I want to pay you out that difference. And please don't argue with me about it. Like, I want to help you. I've got the means to do it. And here's the difference, and just leave it at that. That might be what I would, that might be what I would do. But I think what you're unlocking here is like, this is a great example of like the type of conversation I would like to hear, like between he's got a perspective that neither you and I nor I have, as like the originator of the OG price guide. And I would, and wanting to hear just how things have evolved over time, which he talks about on his podcast and everything. I'd be lying if I said I listened to every episode of what he does. There's a million content, channels out now, but he's got a perspective that may be unique, right? Historical and unique, and things have evolved and the hobby has changed a lot. I did a video. I'm going to see if I think it should let me screen share. I'll just show, like, I did a video on this topic. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah. I love it.
Okay. Maybe you got to pop it up there. Perfect. Thank you. So this is just a video that I did 3 years ago now. It was, if I'm trying to hover, it won't show me, but if you search this title on the Market Movers channel, I did a video called Card Value Doesn't Come from Historical Sales Data. Here's why. And I went through a whole bunch of stuff, so I'm not going to like break down the video, nor do I remember all the points of what I talked about here. But this was prompted by a series of story posts that Sean at Victory Investments did, talking about kind of where card values come from in price. And maybe that sounds funny coming from a guy who's in charge of developing a sports card pricing comp app. It's a comp app. That's how the hobby operates today. But comp, it's like the best we've got. But comps actually a lot of times don't make sense. The comp world is highly illogical. There's a ton of inconsistency. It's a good thing if you like to look for arbitrage opportunities or different gaps and things, and Market Movers has a lot of tools for that. But it doesn't mean, like, to your point, that's what the card is worth. While he may operate a competitive app to market movers, one thing that I think Chris Hoge and I have agreed on a lot over the years, as I've heard him talk too, is when we think about like auctions in particular, the card is really only worth, once it ends, once the auction ends, it's actually only, let's call it theoretically worth what the next highest bidder was willing to pay for that card. So it went one bid increment over. Now, if that person were to turn around and just put it back on auction overnight and not be the bidder, presumably without additional exposure or some new person becoming aware or having had FOMO, the next highest bidder wants it and the next higher. And I think it's that video that I talk about it where I played out like this hypothetical scenario. Like it might have even been specifically with the PSA 10 Jordan Flair rookie card, where it's like one hits the market, let's say, and it hasn't been a long time. Maybe I didn't even use a card. And this person comes in and says like, I really want this card. And they pay up and they had 5 underbidders all in the mix. And then a month later, somebody else who's holding one says, man, I bought this card for $30K, 10 years ago, like, and it's up to 200. Oh, let me put mine up for auction. And then the next highest bidder and the next highest bidder and the next highest bidder gets it, until the original one's going from thinking like, cool, I got my grail, to like, oh crap, my grail just got cut in half in price. But like, it's all supply and demand. It's all timing. It's all frequency of how often cards hit the market. And then layer on top of that, the unfortunate reality that there is, to what extent we don't know, but there is manipulation. There are other things. Again, I try not to be too rash to point the finger at somebody and definitively say, I think they're doing shady things, but you do have to tread carefully, and you have to use this thing that we were given in here to like really question things and just make sound decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you raise a lot of really important points. And again, based on like what you're saying, like there is manipulation, and I've been in this hobby since the 80s. I was a dealer from the age of 13 to 18. I've said this, I've probably sold Gary V cards when he was a kid, because I did every show in New Jersey. And he's a couple years younger than me. And so if he went to the card shows, I probably sold him stuff. But let's get into this conversation, this topic, and then we'll end the interview. So one of the things, like you said, like there is manipulation, but we don't know where it is. So making unsubstantiated claims is a problem. And again, like you said, once someone says something online, everybody kind of piles on and goes, oh, that's this and that's that. And I think that to a certain extent, Sports Card Radio tries for the most part. It's not always there. They definitely do swings and misses where you're like, why did they say that? But for the most part, when they do a really, like, I guess I would say incendiary video, they do have some receipts. They don't have the whole story, but based on what they have, at least it's some evidence to say, this is what we think. And they make it very clear that they're just giving their opinion. Although it can be very, inflammatory, sort of like, hey, this is, and they've gone after Jeff, they've gone after Golden, they've gone after everybody. But they do have some evidence. Again, I want to make that clear. It's not completely unsubstantiated, but it's just not the full story, even though they're making conclusions, which is, I think, different than how you are. And I can actually play this clip from
to act in a too knee-jerk of a manner with things. I try to really think about things. I pray about things. I contemplate. I don't like to be rash. Okay. And when all this went down last week and Neo released the clip, and then I listened to Dr. Beckett's both parts of the interview, we did cards on the table. I tried to be measured and reasonable. I actually had recorded, like on my phone, like a voice message with like, Apple voice message, voice memos, a message to Patrick, and like wanted to sleep on it. Was like considering, do I send this to him? Do I not? And then I found out he was like going on a whirlwind tour, like threatening people. And I just thought, I'm not going to poke the bear. And the message was one of like, more or less like, hey, it seems like you made a really big mistake, and you just need to admit it. Like, admit you made a really big mistake, and if you can, prove that it was just one mistake.
Again, the beginning of that clip is just that you're a measured person, that you're not trying to jump to conclusions. Do you, based on the fact that you've now been on social media, what, 4 years? As like
for a long time, but for cards for 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as a professional, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have my own, but I want to hear from you. Do you have any advice for anybody that's watching this, that's not a professional on social media? Like, when you see stuff,
yeah,
like what's the best first response that you should have?
I think the best first response is to pause. You don't have to rush into things. You don't have to overreact. You can pause, think about it, sleep on it. If you can sleep, hopefully it doesn't keep you up at night. You know, it's tough when any of us gets our person, our character attacked or called into question. That hurts. We all have ego. I for one believe in trying to strip myself of ego and to try to practice humility. It's not easy, and it's not a simple thing either, in the sense that, I mean, it's a complex thing. Humility is a complex thing. It doesn't mean just total like self-abasement and just, you know, pretending like, oh, I'm nothing. Like, just be realistic, be honest. I have faults, and you mentioned Gary V. I know he catches a lot of flack too, and a lot of criticism, but there is something that he, you know, talks about a lot when it comes to this, which is like, when people attack him, he's like, I just assume they must have a lot going on. They have a story, they have a background, they have trauma, they have stress, they're struggling to make ends meet, they whatever. And sometimes that's the case, and that maybe that's the best defense mechanism to help us as individuals, like, realize, you know, I'm going to try to not let this get to me too much. There are people who are just plain a-holes, and they thrive on it, and there's a good number of them, seemingly a growing number of them, but that, again, that doesn't mean there's not a reason why they're that way. Or I mentioned this at the beginning of the interview, but like, it's also just like the nature of what the internet has become in many cases. And so I say people are very complex, and we live in a world and in a society, in a current zeitgeist, where we're conditioned to believe in the binary, here or here, left, right, whatever it is. And now more than ever, when you don't buy into the whole of the thing, where the hive mind is sort of buzzing over here or over here, and you dare to disagree on a single point, whatever the topic might be, you just find yourself suddenly like canceled, excommunicated, kicked out, and then ridiculed by the people who used to be your friends or your allies or your cohort. And you're out because you didn't subscribe or buy into the false dichotomy, just this or this. People aren't courageous enough, or maybe intellectually astute enough to have meaningful conversations anymore and talk to one another. And if I do my own reflection and I go back 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, I just turned 40. I have changed my mind a lot over the years on a lot of things. I have changed my life. I changed my lifestyle. That has led to a lot of better, you know, improvements for me. But there are still things like I'm aware enough to go, I don't see this pattern changing. I'm probably going to have different opinions about certain things when I'm 45, 50, 55, 60, you know, God willing, 100, who knows? Like, we'll see how, you know, how long that goes on. But like, being aware of that, everybody seems to think their own attitude, impression, opinion of things is just for sure correct. And I have strong convictions on some really important things. That doesn't mean that I am naive enough to think everybody in the world thinks that way. They don't. Just be a realist. Just be realistic about things and have enough compassion to like seek to understand before you're understood, which is a pretty powerful but simple principle.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I think one of the bigger issues, and so one of the many hats that I wore over my career. So I'm an expert educator. I'm a former teacher, principal, superintendent. I wrote one book. I'm working on my second one. Chapter 6 of the first book goes over what's called the 6 fundamentals of 21st century leadership skills. One of the problems that you just mentioned is that you don't think that people might have the intellectual capacity, or like they just, this knee-jerk reactions. We're actually taught how to be jerks by our school system. They're promoting it, not on purpose. That's actually part of the second book, is explaining what is going on. And the title of it is Disrupting Education, How to Prevent the Next School Shooter from Happening. Because we're teaching a culture of violence, again, inadvertently, accidentally. And one of the problems that is going on is communications. And what I've had to learn, again, in also researching this book, is what is communications online, and how is it different than communications in person? And I didn't realize, and I've now been on social media, I guess, professionally since 2019, because when I was in education, like when I was a principal and superintendent, I didn't have social media. It's actually, it's bad to have social media as an educator, because only bad can come from it. So once I left the school system and I went on social media, I started to try to communicate, and the way that I communicate in person does not work online.
Yeah.
And I think the issue is that you can't, and I think men have this problem as well, more so than women. Men tend to just jump into the middle of a conversation and just go with it. And you can't online. You cannot just read what someone says and then make a comment. You actually have to give a preface and then explain, well, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And this is the issue. We're not teaching people how to do that. And so it amplifies the negativity, even though some of the people who are commenting are not intentionally trying to be negative. And I know it for me, like I'm just an honest person. Like I value honesty, I value loyalty, and I value sincerity. So when I make comments, I'm just a straight shooter. The problem is that you don't know me. And so you have no idea the background of, oh yeah, that's Doc. He doesn't lie.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's the problem.
Yep. Yeah. There's a lot of factors that compound into how you read a message, how you slept last night, who you just recently interacted with, what your current stress or happiness level is, as well as then like the compounding effects of that every day for the last week, month, year, your whole life, all of that. And you're right. Like when somebody doesn't know you from Joe or whatever, like what if I'm reading through the comments on a video and I just got done reading through really angry, rash, extreme ones, ad hominems, all this stuff. And then I get to one where it's just direct, but I'm suddenly reading it in the tone of all those other ones. It's just, that's the tone. That's the context. Maybe, some people really don't take criticism well, like at all. They have a really hard time with criticism and critique and feedback. Even they're sensitive to it. And so just getting a message like that, it's immediately on the defensive, and they want to either fight or they want to, react, or they want to whatever. I just go back to that, like, pause mindset, pause, sit with it. What does this actually mean? Like, and one thing I do is I think I may have even done this with you on Instagram. But a lot of times I try to send voice messages, which can take a little more time than like snap reading through. But at the same time, it forces somebody to go linearly through the voice message and process and hear the tone, as opposed to scanning a message, brain subconsciously cherry picking out keywords that may or may not come across the right way. And there's no tone. When I send a written message, I don't control the tone. The reader does. They hear the tone in their voice of this person. And so I try to send them, hear that my demeanor is calm or warm or whatever. And so that you're not thinking, if I send this message that, like you said, may jump into the middle of it or be direct or whatever, isn't like, listen here, man, like however we might be processing it. I'm very open to hearing people's opinions when it comes to the hobby. And just, this is like, I call it that for a reason. A lot of us do. It's meant to be a hobby. It's a complex thing. There's a lot of corners and aspects and niches to it, and things that people don't agree with, and some people do, and whatever. But you sort of can't deny the reality that it's continued to evolve into a really complex beast of industry and collecting and passion and money and all of this stuff.
It's grown. I mean, again,
massive.
where it was, my father had an opportunity to buy the Mr. Rosen 9.5 Mickey Mantle. It wasn't graded at the time, but I saw the letter. This was in 1990. And he was asking $52,000 at that point. I know he sold it eventually for like $50K.
Yeah.
And my father said to me, should I buy it? And my answer to him was, do you want to be divorced? And he said, no. I said, well, then there you have your answer. Because again, at the time, and I think this is where the history piece comes into it for a lot of the younger people that are in the hobby, is they can't understand that these downtowns and uptowns are not going to be worth much more than maybe what they are right now. Like, this is it. This is the ceiling. So if you buy it for $2,000, that's what it's worth for the next 20 years.
Yeah. And
you need to be okay with that, because when he was selling that mantle, the most expensive card was the Wagner, which we didn't know was trimmed, but that had gone for $500,000. That was bought by McNall and Gretzky. And that was the most expensive card in the world.
Yeah.
And now the most expensive card in the world is the dual logo man. Again, I think fraudulently, not really, because the most expensive card should be the PSA 10 Mickey Mantle, which I think, based on the 12.5 million for the 9.5, I think is probably worth about 20 mil.
Yeah, people say 20 to 30. Yeah.
Well, insurance companies want it to be worth 30 because they get a better premium, but I don't see anyone. Yeah. Again, that's where auctions come in.
It's tough, isn't it? And I mean, you've got a long history in the hobby. You've been in the hobby since, when I was born, and there's a lot to that. And I don't do the high end market. Like, I don't play in that sandbox, right? So I see the numbers, and when record sales happen, we talk about it on Cards on the Table, and my response is almost always the same. Like, this is more money than I can rationalize ever spending on a piece of cardboard. I'm not in that stratosphere of wealth. If you really start to think about it through how many zeros somebody else has to their name and what that would mean to me extrapolated, you just go, oh, okay. If this card were, $1,400 to me, whatever, like, that's still a big purchase for me. I don't really buy cards that expensive, but I understand now, like, it's not as mind boggling when you think about how much money certain individuals have. It's tough to say. Like, at the end of the day, it's really tough to say. Things raise eyebrows. You don't know what's going on. I do tend to assume that when huge dollar signs are at stake, there's just more probability of things happening, manipulation or whatever. That it's just, I can't say that it factually is. I wouldn't go that far to have confidence in it, but it's more probable than, let's say, $20 Pistons cards. I think
very true.
At the end of the day, so.
My piece of it would be when you're, and so just to jump off that, and then we can end this, and I appreciate it, is when you're dealing with those types of dollar amounts, the people that are buying them are really good with money. And they're either buying it for three reasons. One is ego. I own it. You
Correct.
don't own it.
Yeah.
2, they actually understand the value of the card. Or 3, which is unfortunately what I think Mr. Wonderful is doing. I think he's trying to manipulate other people for whatever new venture he has. That card is just not worth what he paid for it. But they're going.
Well, I think it's safe to say, because he's said it. He has said it. This is what I think we can factually say about it. his venture, secure collectibles, I think is what it's called, is a financial venture. That's what it is. He views it as an investment index. The Wondershine Index is an investment index in their eyes, and they are like people who buy, high-end art pieces and other things for a collection. That's their motivation. His motivation is not purely out of like being a profound collector who wants to have that incredibly important historical piece for his collection. When you look at somebody like a Marshall Fogel, that guy loves his collection. He is a passionate collector and has been for a long time. And there are many others like that who have great net worth. Their collections, honestly, probably like maybe their collection is like a significant portion of their net worth, but they're just passionate collectors who want to have those cards. And then there's others who have more of a financial motivation.
That's like here in Arizona, and Jeff actually interviewed him on your channel, Ken Kendricks from the Diamondback. That he is a significant collector.
Yeah, for sure.
And he also has a significant collection. Yes. And so it's dual piece. But he, again, I doubt if he didn't have the Mickey Mantle, like he has one. But if he didn't have it, I just don't see him, because he's very smart and he knows money, and he also knows what the cards are really worth. The fact that he has one gives him a little bit of bias, but I highly doubt he would spend more than $25 million on a PSA 10 Mickey Mantle. Yeah. It's just, I highly doubt it, because there is a limit to, it's just because, again, from there, only people who don't know the sports card market would pay more. And that's the piece. And so, but you never know. Like you said, in an open auction, I mean, some of these high-end art paintings go for double what people think they'll go for. But like we saw with the Babe Ruth, I think you originally said it, the card is actually in auction value. It's really only worth what the second highest bid is. That's absolutely true. Hopefully everybody heard that, because that is the piece. And so the Babe Ruth, it had sold for like $4 million, and now it's sold for like, I think it was 1.3. So what is the card really worth? It's probably worth around 1.5 to 1.6. That's probably a healthy valuation on it. And it probably will sell for around that for the next few years. What it will be, years from now, who knows? It could go back up. But I think that we're in a bubble. There's a lot of inflated stuff, not even manipulation. We're just in a bubble. We still have a lot of hype. Fanatics just got the basketball license back. So, I mean, there's just a lot of hype, and 2026 is going to be all marketing all day, all time. So we'll see how that goes. But I want to thank you so much, Tpott, for coming on. And hopefully that apology meant something to you.
It did a lot, actually. It did.
I want to thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And some parting words, I would say we started to kind of unpack a little bit into like terms of service of marketplaces and Fanatics and others. It sounds like, and this is kind of like newly released information, that Jeremy Lee, who's over on Sports Card Live, he's working on a book. And he mentioned this week on a live stream with Professor Sports Cards that he's got what he's calling Appendix F, which is actually an analysis, a full detailed analysis of the terms and conditions of every major down to minor auction house for sports cards, big and small, with a specific focus, it sounds like, on their policy on shill bidding your own items. And so he's going to be highlighting that in his book. And I believe that he's going to be covering that on his weekly Saturday night live stream this Saturday. So tomorrow, after this video releases in the evening. So if people want to hear more about what he's been working on with there, I don't know how much he'll get into the details of those terms, but it does sound too like his motivation for that coverage is to try to encourage a stronger stance on shill bidding in general from the auction houses, and to empower people to at least make educated decisions about where they spend their money and where they make bids, and to have full awareness that if I'm bidding on this item, is there a possibility that either somebody at the auction house themselves is bidding on it to protect a reserve, or that the individual themselves could be bidding on their own item to try to drive up and maximize their payouts? So we deserve to know that as buyers. And I hope that it's never going to end. It's just not. It's a human thing. But the more we can do to try to protect against it, the better. And that starts with the marketplaces, without a doubt.